Hello everyone and welcome to the next review. The World of Warcraft Diary, the WoW Diary by Staats, an environmental designer for the game World of Warcraft, for the MMORPG World of Warcraft. I'm going to posit that even if you've never played World of Warcraft before, that this book, as an artifact, is generally useful, generally applicable for those that are interested in creative endeavours, for those that want to understand how large-scale projects come to fruition. As an artifact, as a diary, it really, it shows you, it illustrates all the hopes and desires of this large creative team. It it shows you how the writer himself got into the industry. Um, it tells you how all of these different technical proficiencies, these different circles within the studio, Blizzard Entertainment, um, work together. Artists, animators, environmental designers, programmers, even HR. I'm convinced that this book, the personal touch of this book, because it is a diary, means that you don't have to have played World of Warcraft before. Of course, there are many details, many environments, monsters, armor sets, locations, dungeons, gameplay specifics that possibly won't make sense to you. But again, it's a general. For me, it feels like a general art book. I had first read the Wild Diary several years ago now, and I'd found it fascinating. I remember reaching out to John Staats when I'd read the Wild Diary, but also, of course, I'd written an article about World of Warcraft for the Ecological Citizen, and I once again reached out to him as well. But there are so many times that I can recall reading this book. The last time was actually last year when I went to Scotland, and on the drive back, I remember dipping in and out of it. It just makes me smile thinking about it. Honestly, the amount of information in here, just seeing how everything comes together, it's just a fascinating read. Before that, I remember sitting outside of a house, waiting for some bats to come out at evening, sitting in the cold and dark in a chair with my bat detector and these forms that I had to fill out. And I loaded up the Wild Diary on my phone, and again, I remember dipping in and out of it. At this point, I've read it so many times; it always makes me happy. So regarding the specifics of the book, it's really a chronicle again of how World of Warcraft came to be, from its very first conception around 2001. John Staats enters Blizzard Entertainment, and he's shown around the office, and there's this project that's being made, and no one's really quite sure what it is. Everything is very bare bones, and from the very first few pages, you get this sense of that there is something brewing. Definitely there's something brewing here, and we get these little conversations between John Staats and other developers as he's been given tours, and people he's seeing certain things on the screen, and it just makes me smile. I have to say, I have to repeat again that I played World of Warcraft um, from childhood, essentially, very long time indeed, 2006 to roughly 2017. So to see World of Warcraft in its infancy, very much so in its infancy, um, it's just a fascinating thing. So as I said before, the book is rather large, 337 pages for a video game diary, and I have to say I'm still impressed by that fact. So as for the contents of the book is really separated into different sections for different um, endeavors that go together to create World of Warcraft. So you'll have things like gameplay, lore, animation, or there'll be subsections for when the game is being tested by multiple people, alphas and betas and things like this. For me, as you can probably imagine, my favourite parts of the book are those that deal with the artistic side. When John writes about the creation of zones, concept art, things like this, how Teldrassil, the enchanted forest of the Night Elves, was first conceived, how Stormwind was built from the ground up, just absolutely inspirational. And there are so many art pieces and diagrams and screenshots that show the very birth of World of Warcraft, old models for player races before they were as they are now in the modern age. pieced together user interfaces that don't even bear any connection to what modern players of World of Warcraft would recognize. Things like this, it's just absolutely fascinating. And so some of you will be aware that I don't really play games much anymore. However, I'm still interested in MMORPGs, very much so, as social artifacts, as ways of painting other worlds, if I can put it that way. The creation of other realms. And for me, the World of Warcraft Diary really feels like it really captures the the striving, the endeavor to create another world outside of this corporate feeling that games seem to have nowadays. Outside as well of a certain aesthetic, at least in terms of MMORPGs, modern MMORPGs, of a certain flashiness, gaudiness. This book, for me, it encapsulates a certain an older time, definitely an older time. I if I do play games nowadays, it's very much. I always look toward older games, games that are not so. The games that are more about atmosphere. And World of Warcraft, in its very first conception, was about atmosphere for me. The true role playing game experience. And this book, in its earnestness and its just the very fact that we're dealing with unfamiliar territory in the creation of this what will be the world's most popular MMORPG, where everything is new and fresh, it just captures a sense of nostalgia. So I think I'll end on some excerpts to give you an idea of what this book is like and how it reads. I've already said that I absorbed much the first day on the job. One of the first things I learned was how unimpressive games look in their early stages. After someone escorted me to my desk, I looked around the area to see hints of what kind of game Team 2 was making. Game designer Eric Dodds approached me and asked, "Has anyone told you what we're working on yet?" I'd seen some Warcraft characters on the wall and fantasy concept art, but that could have been something to do with other projects, as Blizzard was decorated with remnants of old titles. Exteriors were created through this long collaborative production pipeline. After an idea for a zone was approved by Chris Metzen, it would fall to Bill's colour study to represent the general feel of the area so that artists and exterior level designers would be working in the same direction. Zone influences came from everywhere. Justin Thavarat, who specialised in low polygon trees, said the purple night elf trees in Teldrassil, my favourite zone, that's not me speaking, that's John speaking, were inspired by the purple jacaranda trees lining Campus Drive, a street near the Blizzard office. Westfall was inspired by the Oklahoma Dust Bowl, and Duskwood came straight from the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Barrens, however, was not the team's favourite zone. Even Matt Sanders, the fastidious exterior level designer who worked on it, didn't care for the idea of an empty zone. And as I'm reading these, I recall that one of my favourite parts of this book is how there's a kind of a layered structure to the book, sense of progression, where day by day things will keep continually being added. For example, Tim Truesdale had gotten procedural clouds into the daily build. Night Elf buildings were finally going into the game, and the Scourge had been redesigned again, although Chris Metzen still needed to repeat himself that he wanted the undead to be called the Forsaken. To prevent stagnation and complacency from creeping into the atmosphere, the team met once a month to keep everyone moving in the same direction, highlighting each other's progress and disseminate new ideas. At one such gathering, Gary Plattner announced he was hoping to be finished with all the world textures for the exteriors by the end of the year. The exterior level designers were finally pushing into Kalimdor, which meant they were further along than everyone else on the team, and would be in a position to help polish other aspects of the project if the exterior zones were finished early. So yes, as you can imagine, I definitely enjoyed this book, and no matter how many times I read it, there's always something that I can find and enjoy, get inspiration from. So that was The WoW Diary by John Staats. Thanks for watching, everyone. Till next time.